Welcome to Too Late with Dave. We're with photographer Chris Floyd.
Hello, Dave. Can I just say, this is the weirdest experience. We're in a black tomb.
Yeah, with each other.
Just me and you with each other, with nothing, no audience, no two people who know each other quite well, talking about things
They know quite well.
that they know quite well, as if they don't know them at all.
So neither of us really need to be here.
So neither of us need to be here.
Yeah.
And this is quite a strange experience, yeah.
What's the worst description of your job you've ever had? Just like, I remember one of the press things for your book said snapper, which, you know, I just find that really demeaning.
Demeaning, snapper.
I use it a lot.
I think it's okay to say it yourself.
Yeah.
You can refer to yourself as that.
But would you?
If I was being what's the word?
Self-effacing?
Self-effacing,
Yeah.
yes, I would. But other people are not allowed to say it.
Yeah.
That's the rule.
What about when a journalist describes you in a
Hack.
Hack? Yeah, like they wouldn't like being called a hack.
Snapper, just a photographer, obviously, which is why the book's called Not Just Pictures.
Yeah.
The worst one, we can come back to that, because I'm sure there are loads.
I remember finally I hang out with David Montgomery quite a lot, who's obviously an excellent photographer. And he'd always tell me what to do. He'd say, put your setting on here, take that guy's picture. We're in a cafe. And I'd do it. And he'd go, yeah, not bad. I'd say, let me take your picture, because then I don't worry about it. And he goes, I'd take his picture and he'd say, change this. Yeah, it's okay, it's okay. Finally, I take a picture that I think is great. And he went, that's a really good camera.
Actually, you've just led me in really well, actually. That actually is the ultimate. People don't even realise how insulting it is when they say that, do they?
No,
you know,
you have a really good camera.
You must have a really good camera. It's like no one says to a chef, you must have a really sharp knife. Or to a writer, you must have a really good pen.
Yeah, I might start saying that. A new way to be an artist.
I mean, one of the things that I have done with journalists is when they treat you like you're their property.
Yeah.
And they will. This doesn't really happen anymore, but it used to happen a bit more, where you'd be working with a journalist and they would direct you to take a picture of something. And then, so I worked out a response to that, which was, okay, no problem. Yeah, I'll do it on the condition that you promise me one thing. And they go, yeah, sure, no problem. What's that? And I go, when you sit down to write your piece, I want to be able to stand behind you and tell you which words to type. And then normally that hammers the point home. You know, it's said with grace and wit, but, you know.
So I'm going to jump back a bit. So you've been a veteran photographer.
How long?
You are a veteran
I have been a veteran photographer.
You are a veteran. So you've been a professional photographer for around 30 years?
Yeah, I time it from when I last earned £1 that came not from photography. So that was summer of 92. I worked doing telesales for Yellow Pages in Surbiton.
Nice.
And that sort of late summer, I got some assisting work with not with Jill Feminovsky, Gillian Edelstein.
Oh, yeah.
Gillian Edelstein gave me some assisting work. And then I got into some freelance assisting. And then from that point on, every penny I've ever earned has come only from photography. So I sort of time it from that point on, really, which is late 92.
Wow. I mean, and still going, which is no mean feat in this day and age where everyone's a photographer.
Yeah, I think that if you can, when you start out, you're young and fresh and exciting, and people might even think of you as hip. Then you go through a sort of middle period where you've got experience, and then you get this late middle period, I think, where you can go out of fashion, or you're not exciting anymore. There's obviously, you're working for people I'm working now for people who are a lot younger than me, like the people that commission me, and often I'm the oldest person there. So you become really conscious of that. And if you can get through that period and remain kind of relevant to those younger people who are pulling the strings, then you can enter what you call the legendary phase if you're lucky, the Mick Rock period. Because if you look at someone like Mick Rock, he was really, really not fashionable for a long time, you know, and then suddenly he'd been alive for so long and still going for so long that he suddenly became legendary because he had documented a period that was heroic to people who were now in the position of pulling the commissioning strings. Because he did all the stuff with, you know, David Bowie, Lou Reed, Iggy, all of that. And then suddenly people want to touch the hem of his garment, you know, for that reason. If you can get through that, then it can take you into the sunset gracefully.
Neil Preston often says that the reason he gets, or his understanding of why people are so interested in talking to him and meeting him, his line is, people want to touch the guy that touched the guy.
Yeah.
Because he's, you know, and they might be too freaked out to meet one of their heroes, but he's met them, so you can absorb that. Yeah. And so you've had this long and varied career, and then you decided you want to do a book. So what was your why did you want to do a book?
People had said it to me for quite a long time, and I'd always thought, who cares, you know, who cares?
Your publisher wanted me to point out that he's been a photographer longer than you.
Yeah, but he's older than me. I mean, he's older than the Ark.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's no coincidence his name's Methuselah, isn't it? Like, I think lockdown, I think COVID, because suddenly when COVID came along, I'd actually bought a film scanner. One of the things that always prevented me from sort of seriously thinking about it, actually not thinking about it, but actually doing a book, was what to do with the pre-digital material. So I've got 15 odd years of stuff on film. Just the actual physical act of editing that and then making it, having to scan it and make it, prepare it for publication. Just that was so daunting.
Now, were you a photographer that shot a lot? So were you shooting a lot on film? If you had a session with someone, like now you can rattle off 1,000 shots without thinking about it.
In the old days, in the film days, if I was doing, say, like a portrait commission, which most of the time I'm shoot on medium format. So it's square out of Bronica. I would shoot, so that's 12 frames on a roll. And also you're kind of, the other factor is time, the amount of time you get with people, and the amount of time also it takes to set up and prepare in the analog era was much longer, because you'd do your lighting and then you'd do a Polaroid, and then you have to wait 90 seconds for that to develop with the Polaroids under your arm, under your armpit. So you get all these little small things make it a much more protracted process. So on average, I would say when I went doing the book and I started going through envelopes of film, that there would be shot number one would be, the first shot with the subject would probably be maybe 6 to 8 rolls of film. So that's whatever that is, 96 frames. Then maybe there's a second shot where they changed the clothes, or it's a different look, or we've changed the lighting. Then you're into like sort of 4 rolls of film. And then third shot, if you're lucky, maybe 1 or 2 rolls of film. Like a sort of, let me just try this one more thing, 5 minutes before you go, we'll just quickly do this. And so you're looking at maybe maximum of 12 to 15 rolls of film, of medium format film. So that's 150, 180 frames, which is...
But typically were the subjects or the PR or whoever was in charge giving you enough time? Like, have you noticed that now, because they think it takes 3 seconds to take a picture, they give you 5 seconds for a shoot?
It really, really varies, because sometimes, yes, you get the 5-minute thing, or they say they're going to give you an hour and you end up getting 10 minutes. But then other times you get, I think in some ways the organisation is often much better now. and it's agreed in advance. Subject is going to come for 4 hours. We've got 1 hour for hair and makeup and whatever else. 2 hours of shooting time, and then the journalist has got to do an interview, and that's an hour. So they divide that 4 hours up, say. And also I'm experienced enough now to be able to kind of work out how to negotiate a bit more time than you might necessarily have been given, because I've got a lot of stories, you know, and the thing is if you can make your subject, you know, one of the things I've said is that when I'm working, that's showtime, you know, and I'm the show, and the subject is actually the audience. And if I can make my show go with a bang, then the audience is happy to stay longer. You know, and that's sort of how I think of it. You've got to make yourself interesting to them.
Yeah.
Because they've, you know, I was like, oh, you know all these things.
Yeah, they've had a million pictures taken.
They've had a million pictures taken. It's not exciting. But if you can be a unique individual with some pizzazz or charisma, or be funny or engaging or interesting, or have something to tell them, then they kind of want to lean into you and hear it from you, you know.
Yeah, if you can finish before they're expecting it, it's always good.
And then that's the other one, to finish before they're finish before they're expecting to finish, even if it's 10 minutes. You know, because I do think of a shoot, a sort of portrait session, in a way as a sort of, you know, if you look at the histogram on the back of a camera, you know, if it's a sort of well exposed image, it's a sort of mountain shape. You know, you've got your shadows at one end, and then you rise to a peak somewhere in the mid-tones in the middle, and then you come down the other side to the highlights at the bottom end. I sort of think of an actual shoot like that in a way, and that sort of mountainous image is the kind of path of the shoot, and you get to a peak at some point, hopefully, when you're sort of probably 60 to 70% done. That's your sort of peak, and then after that, then you're just going to come nicely down from the mountain, and you know, in time for like a drink at sunset. You know, it's that sort of feeling, and you want to be able to gracefully finish. Go, okay, thanks very much, I've got it, and be able to say it with confidence, you know, and then, you know, go on, off you go.
Now, did that happen with on your book cover? We chose Mr. McCartney.
Yeah. Well, you were there, weren't you?
I was there. And I mean, I must say, this was kind of everything that can go right and wrong in a shoot, you know. But I think the main thing is, for you have to come away with something close to what you've been commissioned to get. And I think the people that commission photos for magazines or whatever often don't understand that because their great idea is a great idea, that Sir Paul McCartney is not necessarily going to stand on one leg and wear a silly hat or whatever the brief.
Yeah. Often, well, that didn't happen with this one, did it? There wasn't any great that I can remember.
No, I think we just had a volume of different setups because we had to fill a lot of pages.
Because I had done Yoko before this for Mojo. Are we allowed to say Mojo? We're saying it now. I'd done Yoko for Mojo in New York, because that's where I was living at the time. And Mojo commissioned me to do Yoko, or you had commissioned me to do Yoko. So I did Yoko, and that went really well. And everyone was really pleased with that. She liked the pictures enough to buy them, you know, to buy some usage rights off me. So for a couple of years, I got Christmas cards from her as well. Really? Yeah. So that had gone well enough. And then whoever it was, it might have been, would it have been Wags? Mark Wagstaff at Mojo would have said, well, we're in the same issue, we're doing McCartney, but it's in London. If you'd like to do it, it would be great. but I probably would have had to have paid my own flight. I don't think Mojo would have. But I was so thrilled
Beatle
with the
fan.
thought of being a massive fan. The flight was just like an irrelevance. It was just, I've got to get there. I've got to get there. So it was all tickety-boo. And I came back to London and we had this time allotted with him at the London Arena where he was rehearsing. And the instruction was come at 8 o'clock in the morning. He's going to arrive at 10, so you've got 2 hours to set up.
Luxury.
And then you got half an hour with him. So we did. We built a whole studio, kind of set up on the floor of the arena.
It was four or five different setups.
I did, yeah. I remember
You painted a backdrop.
I remember painting a backdrop. There was a white Colorama and a dark grey one.
Had you wanted him to paint the backdrop? Was that?
No, I just sort of had some paint
Yeah.
that I had lying around, because I had my flat in London, which I still always owned, even though I was living in New York, and my sort of friend of mine was living in it. So I'd had all this stuff in the flat, and one of the things was like loads of paint left over from something. So I just thought, I sort of grabbed it and just thought, I'll take that with me and see what we can do. And I remember there was so much, it was so enormous, the arena, because there were no seats in, the floor was just empty. I remember laying the, rolling a bit of Colorama out on the floor, white backdrop paper, and literally just doing a sort of Jackson Pollock with this paint all over it for a laugh. So there was that, and then anyway, and then he came, didn't he? He was there at 10, but he just went straight into rehearsing with the band, and we got to watch him all day, which was amazing. Remember?
It was me, you, and Wag, wasn't it?
Yeah, just sitting there. Yeah. Thank you. That was Strawberry Fields Forever, one of John's. And then when we did finally get our time with him, it was very late in the day, maybe too late. Just pausing to have a sip there from my too late mug. So it was very late in the day, and he was clearly in a rush, and he just thought he could kind of rush it, give us literally less than 5 minutes, and then leave, because he was going to the BBC for a live radio performance, and that was ruling everything, the live BBC thing. And I think I must have said to him something like, I came all the way from New York for this. It's just, I was told we would have half an hour. I was kind of mentally, kind of prepared, or, in my head it was, it's like going out onto the pitch, and then suddenly they tell you the game's not 90 minutes anymore, it's now 10 minutes, and it's like, oh, I haven't even had a chance to even try and score a goal. So he was like, yeah, but I'm so sorry, anyway, I think you've got enough. And I was like, I haven't got enough. And I came all the way from New York for this. And then that kind of tickled his interest. He was sort of curious as to why I'd come all the way from New York. And I'm like, well, because it's you. That's why I came all the way from New York. And then we had a little chat about the Beatles' first trip to New York in '64, and he kind of talked about how exciting that was, and he still gets that thrill, that buzz whenever he goes back. And then he just sort of casually said, well, when are you going back to New York? And I said, Tuesday. And it was a Friday. Yeah. When are you going back to New York? And I said, Tuesday. And he said, well, what are you doing on Monday? And I remember just almost like, I sort of open palm shrugged at him like, nothing, nothing. And he goes, well, why don't you come back on Monday? Leave all your stuff here over the weekend and come back on Monday, and I'll give you half an hour. And we shook hands on it, and I said, is that a deal? And he said, yes, it's a deal. And we shook hands. Short of sort of spitting on our palms, it was pretty cemented. So psychologically, I knew then that I had my half hour, because he had promised it, and he just didn't. He's just not the sort of person, I don't think, who would. You'd have to go a long way down the road of being a dick for him to renege on that. So yeah, we came back on the Monday, had our second shot. But I do remember he was wearing the wrong clothes, because he was wearing a white T-shirt, and I wanted this, I wanted a dark picture. I had that kind of, those Avedon,
Yeah.
the Richard Avedon's 1968 pictures, I think 67, 68, the ones that are kind of Mount Rushmore collage, these 4 individuals that he made into a big panoramic. That's sort of what I had in my head. That was my sort of inspiration, and I really wanted this dark, very monochromatic thing. But he was wearing a bright white T-shirt. So fortunately, there was a whole wardrobe there, because he was rehearsing for this big arena tour. They had the full, they had everything there as if it was a real gig. Yeah. Monogrammed everything, catering. So I persuaded him to just put a dark. He's got a dark blue jumper on, and then that jacket over the top. And then he was really nice and just really easy and breezy. But what I wanted was that, as I say in the book, is I wanted that really focused, really ambitious, really steely, determined 50s grammar school boy, which is, I think, what has driven him. Even when you watch Get Back, if anyone's seen Get Back, there is a bit in it where they're just sitting around doing nothing, and then Paul says, almost apropos nothing, he says, what does he say? Achieve something every day. Almost like he's thinking out loud. Like that's his sort of ethic that he's obviously got from his dad. You must achieve something every day. And that's what I wanted, to get from him was that. But of course, I'm not really getting it from his easy breezy sort of winsome chat,
Yeah.
And I just kept thinking, this is going nowhere, and this is awful, and I'm not getting this. And the way I describe it is a bit like, in my head, I'm in the cockpit of a plane, and it's going straight down, and I can just see this sort of rocky landscape in the windscreen of the plane, just getting bigger and bigger in the window in my head. And then I have this thing with him where I just said to him, do less, just do less, because he's very he's kind of,
he's playing for
he's
the
just
camera.
playing, he's just doing silly things, and I don't want any of that. I just want that seriousness, that focus and determination that's underneath. And I said, do less. And then he says, what's the matter? Don't you like a bit of whimsy? And then I go, not when there's a war on, Paul, because it's 2003 and Iraq is in full swing. Not when there's a war on, Paul. And in my head, I was sort of saying it as if I was Captain Mannering in Dad's Army. It was supposed to be kind of dryly humorous, whimsical. But I think he took it as if I was really, really
having a pop,
admonishing him for it, and then that's when his face went to that. Because if you look at that book cover, that contact sheet, everything before it is quite, he's not really there, and then his face it was like there was it's almost like there's a thin sheet of incredibly fine silk hanging across his face, and then it just dropped away, and what was underneath was revealed, which was this sort of granite, he was just so, all his patience with me just dissolved, only for a couple, 2 or 3 seconds, because I shot 2 frames, one after the other, with a Mamiya 6.7, so big medium format camera on a tripod. Click, wind it on, click again. I remember glancing down quickly for the second frame to just quickly check the focus. And I just knew then. But then I also knew that I had to sort of, break the ice, melt the
Change
ice,
the mood again.
change the mood again with him. And I just said, just close your eyes for me, and he did, and and then I just thought I'll do two couple of frames with his eyes shut to just kind of bring us back, almost like a palate cleanser, and then I knew then that I had it, and then actually I was able to relax, because one of the things was you get unbelievably nervous and tense doing this stuff. Really, I'm very, I can feel how sort of awkward I am. As soon as you get to a point on any shoot where you know that you're getting close to or are achieving the thing that you set out to try and do, then you can really relax.
Yeah.
And then you get to a thing where you can do, then you're kind of like, oh, let's just try something else now. And then we did, we did this.
His Yesterday guitar.
That's his Yesterday guitar, isn't it? And that is a Detroit Red Wings sticker that someone gave him in the 70s. But I think he's taken it off it now. But yeah, that's his Epiphone, isn't it? Epiphone Texan.
So did you shoot the show?
No.
We didn't go to the show.
Well, there was no show because he was just rehearsing.
No, but I remember the PR saying, do you want to come to the show? And I was like, no. And he looked shocked. I was like, because it's not going to be better than watching 2 full rehearsals.
Yeah.
With just 3 people.
There being a show at all.
No, there was a show like a week later. So it was a few days of rehearsals.
Well, I didn't get that invite. Maybe only you did.
I didn't piss him off.
Yeah, so that was that. But often you do feel a bit of a Burke in these situations, because you have to. If people are not going to come to you, you're on this line. There's this line between the two of you, and if they're not going to come to you down that line, you have to meet on the line on this what I think of as this imaginary line. You've got to meet on that line somewhere. And if you're not meeting on the line, then it means I've got to go all the way down the line to you. And then you're in a terrible position because you're sort of metaphorically and literally prostrating yourself to try and get them if they don't come up the line.
And then with
Vivian, this is quite a good one actually. Speaking of the line, so Vivian Westwood sitting on this chair. This was it was her show, menswear show in Milan, and I had gone over there to shoot her for Marie Claire magazine, and they gave me this big empty room. The show's in some sort of big kind of Italian palazzo, and there's this big room, sort of backstage room that they give me to do the shots in, and I come in and there are, this empty room with some carpet and a rug and a white wall, and I just think, okay, well, there's a nice white wall, nice simple thing, and all these identical chairs, and I get a chair, put it there for where I want her to sit, get it all set up, then the PR brings her in, and bear in mind she's her show, that's what's on her mind today. She's doesn't care about me. This is. For her, this is it's a kind of distraction. It's an obstacle in the way of her purpose. So her purpose and my purpose are 2 different things. And if you have to be aware of that, and you have to manage it diplomatically. However, she comes in the room. She seems all right. She sees the chair. She realizes that that's for her. And I remember her just pointing at the chair and going, "Here." And I go, yes, and she sits down. And then I realise that I also need a chair, because I'm shooting on a tripod with sort of a mix of available light and a little bit of flash. And so it's quite a slow shutter exposure. So, the camera's on the tripod. And I think, well, I need to be at the same height as her. Camera needs to be at the same height as her. I'll get a chair too, and then we're all at the same height. So I go over to where there's this whole load of these identical chairs, get another one. Now, the thing I've sort of not mentioned until now is that also in the room are, 8 to 10 Chinese fashion students who are on a kind of trip to Milan, and they are shadowing. They've been invited to watch the show. And the PR brings the Chinese fashion students into the room to watch the shoot. And they've all got little notebooks, and it's like they're writing down everything that's happening. They're taking notes on everything. And every time something happens, you watch like 10 heads all go down at the same time, and 10 pens all scribble the same thing. So I get my chair, come back, and I make this joke to them as I carry the chair back, which is something like, any time I can do my job sitting down is a better day at work for me. Just something stupid like that. Get the chair, put it in front of her, and I go to sit on the chair, and it's like feeling like when you've been for a hospital appointment and you've been anaesthetized, and there's a part of it that you just don't remember. And I remember putting the chair down, and then the next thing I remember after that was being on the carpet, just surrounded by loads of small sticks of wood and a kind of velvet seat. And I'd just gone straight down. This chair had just completely collapsed in front of me. It was like, it was just a terrible scene from like a cartoon. And I remember the PR, Vivienne Westwood's PR, leapt forward with this look of complete sort of anguish on her face. And she just went, "Oh my God, are you okay? Vivienne, are you okay?" And she went in her sort of kind of Derbyshire accent, "I'm fine. It's him I'm worried about." And I just remember seeing all the Chinese students in unison writing it down.
They probably think that's normal for a
Yeah.
shoot. Yeah. Slapstick. Yeah.
But you sort of have to, take that stuff in your stride, don't you? And accept that sometimes playing the fool or being the fool, whether you chose to be that or not, can work to your advantage. And it can, if you can be like, if that happens to you and you can carry that gracefully, and just, with some aplomb, then people warm to you, actually. One of the things that I kind of learned from moments like that is that people do warm to people who are not afraid to show fallibility or, not weakness in the kind of classic sense of the word, but to show that you're human and that you're, these things happen, and you just have to kind of get up and just accept everyone saw it happen. You can't deny it. It's just, it's how you carry it from there that matters, really.
And so we've got a mix here of pictures of music and designers and actors. This, I believe, was fairly early on for you, was it?
Yeah, this is Oasis May. Actually, it's the 21st of May today. And this was the May bank holiday, the late May bank holiday 94. So it's 30 years ago this weekend, this next Monday.
You don't look old enough.
And that was one of those jobs where it was very early in my career. It was for Loaded magazine. I'd done maybe 2 or 3 shoots for them. Nothing, massive, but they'd all gone well. And then this was like another one of those. It was like, do you want to do a shoot for us on Bank Holiday Monday? It's in Manchester. Now, the thing I remember the most was like the thing about bank holidays in Britain and trains is 2 words always come up: engineering works. And I just remember that this train journey to Manchester just seemed to take forever. And finally arriving and then having to get a taxi to this sort of really crappy hotel in Fallowfield.
So Oasis were not really...
No, they were not. This was
they weren't on your
Supersonic.
radar.
No, I'd never heard of them. or maybe I might have read about them but not known anything. I had heard Supersonic on the radio though, a lot. It was on Radio 1 all the time, but I didn't know who it was by. I'd heard the song, but that was it. But I didn't connect that song with this particular band. And also, I was told to go to this hotel and just when you get there, ask for Noel Gallagher, and no one had told me who Noel Gallagher was. And it could be anyone, it could be the manager, it could be the tour manager, it could be, press officer, I don't know. Just ask for Noel Gallagher. So I go to the hotel, and it's one of those, really sort of down on its luck, big, once grand Edwardian sort of villa type houses that is, now like a sort of 7 or 8 bedroom kind of bedsit hotel type place, like a sort of DSS type place. And the woman, I remember behind the desk, me just going, I'm here to see Noel Gallagher. And I remember her just going like, down the corridor, room 4, in this really jaded, unbothered Manc accent. So I go down the corridor, knock on the door. Noel answers the door. And he just goes, all right. I was all right. And we go in. We don't really talk. And he just starts going through this address book, which is in this picture here, there. Yeah. And he's just ringing numbers in the address book, and all the calls are completely identical. All right. See you now, kid. All right. See you later. Click. And I'm just sort of, he's not explained anything. And all the while there is football on the telly, just to the out of the frame on the right. This picture is a TV. I think he's watching the telly. And it is the First Division playoffs. So that's why I know it's that Bank Holiday Monday, because I Googled it, and there's a Wikipedia page for that game, and I can't remember who it is anymore. But so he's just sitting there in that just awkward silence while he makes phone calls. So I just thought, well, I might as well take some pictures of this, and I just for something to do, because I'm just sitting there feeling like a plum. And it's funny, really, because those pictures are very incredibly evocative, of a time pre-fame for him. Look, it's like there's such a tatty room. Look how it's so small. Look, when you look that you've got a bed and that table
and a landline
and
a phone book,
landline and a phone book, yeah. And he's got his like desert boots and his trainers and his sort of and the duvets, and
a bag of crisps.
Big, empty bag of crisps, bottle of whatever that is on the side, Lucozade maybe. And he's just a bloke, isn't he? He's just a bloke in a room, and it's so just taking pictures just for something to do. And then he finally located our kid on the phone, and I still don't know who our kid is because I don't understand the dynamic of the band, and I don't know anything about them. And then he says, and he just says, "Come on, let's go," and we get up and leave the room. And as we left the room, in Columbo, whenever Peter Falk would, always towards the end of the episode, the kind of the gotcha moment where he would suddenly go, "Okay, thanks very much, madam," and he'd leave the room, and then he would turn to go out the door. "Oh, one last question." Well, it was like that with Noel. As we went out the room, he just turned to me and he went, "What do you think of Blur?" And I went, "Yeah, I think they're all right." And he went, "Second best band in Britain."
Very
and
cautious.
I remember, I didn't say it out loud, but I remember thinking in my head, second best band in Britain? Who's the best band then? And, maybe he thinks it's them. I was like this, like my head going around. Anyway, and then we leave, and we just seem to walk for ages, and we walk to a street corner, and then there's this group coming towards us. And one of them is this kid in like blue Adidas tracksuit bottoms and a red jacket coming straight at us. And I remember saying to Noel, "Who's that?" And he goes, "That's our kid." you know, like slightly annoyed, exasperated with him more than joyous. But then when Liam bowls up, you know, again, I'm like, it was the first time I'd seen that walk, like, to see that in the flesh, coming straight towards you. It is an incredible walk. It is an amazing walk. He comes up, and then the act of doing a handshake, because that becomes like a whole. It's like a sort of half of a cricket bowl almost, you know, just because. All right, Chris, yeah. So I think Noel had told him my name. And the first question he asked me was, who do you support? And I said, Arsenal. And he goes, oh, I don't even want to, I can't even look at you. I can't even look at you. And then we took these pictures at the Man City Stadium, at the old Main Road Stadium. And it was just, do you know what? And then when I got on the train to go home, I do remember thinking, because that's right, Liam had said, when I said I lived in London, he said, oh, we're playing in London next week. Do you want to come down? And I was like, oh yeah, great. And he said, yeah, we'll put you on the guest list. And that was and then they played at the Marquee the following week. But I remember being on the train going home thinking, if he is any good, if that band are as good as he is,
his impression,
that guy's a star. You could tell he was a star before I even knew who he was, really. Yeah. So yeah.
Nice. How was the gig?
Oh, it was Marquee. It was worth going.
Yeah.
It was bonkers, really bonkers.
I know.
And then they went out afterwards. I remember everyone went out. It was just like this sort of Pied Piper of people following them back to the Columbia Hotel.
Oh God. That's another podcast.
It's a whole. They should do a podcast. Someone should do a podcast on stories from the Columbia, shouldn't they? I think Nirvana. That's where Nirvana always used to stay as well.
Everyone stayed there.
Cheap. Yeah, exactly.
And they look the other way a lot of the time. Then we have Bill Murray.
Yeah, this is Bill Murray from Venice in 2003 for. It was like it was the Venice Film Festival, and it was Lost in Translation, was the movie that he was there for. So again, it was, I was working for Premiere, the American movie mag, doing a sort of, you know, the whole festival, portraits of 20 people a day. You're just running around like a blue-ass fly, and, you know, you got to be here at 10 o'clock, somewhere else at 10:30, you know. You barely have time to, you know, go to the loo. You know, you're just shooting people all day long. And this was just one appointment in a day of many. And it's August. It's Venice. It's, you know, 100 degrees. It's unbelievably hot. And we're just carrying all our equipment, you know, and your shoulders are like got blisters from your camera bag straps, and you just feel disgusting all day long. With, you know, you're just soaked in your own sweat. It's the sort of indignity of it is just these kinds of things. Cannes, Venice, you really do not look at your best.
And all the actors
and you are confronted with people who are looking absolutely at their best. And you just feel like this horrible, disgusting serf at the gates of the palace, you know, with a begging bowl. Please, can I take your picture? And so anyway, this one was, I had to shoot all three. I had to shoot Sofia Coppola, Scarlett Johansson, and Bill Murray. And I had, because it was Premiere, which was the biggest American movie mag, it had some weight. Yeah. So they had done like a group photo call for the Italian press, or all the press pack, but obviously nearly all the photographers are Italian. And they'd done that, but because I was Premiere, I had been given like a couple of minutes with each of them individually on my own after the press pack had done their bit. So I was sort of slightly more valuable, more you know, important, I guess, in that, you know, not me, but Premiere. Yeah. So I did Sofia Coppola, then I did Scarlett Johansson, and then I did Bill Murray, and but the press pack were all just hanging around you know, kind of watching, and I'd watch them with him, and they're just all screaming at him like, you know, like you got 40 or 50 Italian men,
All trying to get his eye.
all with sort of beards. All of them look like Richard Young, and all trying to get his eye, all going, you know, the way the Italians say bill is like bil, you know, so you're like 50 men going bill over and over again. And because we've been here for a whole week, I had an assistant with me, we've been there all week. This was very late in the day as well, this one. I remember it was maybe 4 or 5 in the afternoon. You're knackered and slightly deranged from this. And I think I went a bit sort of mad in the sun, and I said to my assistant, I'm going to talk to Bill Murray as if I'm one of those, as if I'm an Italian press photographer. And he said, no, I bet you're not. And I was like, I bet you I am. And then we sort of had this bet. And then, so when I had my 2 minutes with Bill, who was also probably quite frazzled by having to do tons and tons of press, you know, he's sort of over it as well. So he comes over, and we're in this hotel garden, and there's this kind of plastic child's kind of playhouse, sort of like a you know, multicolored playhouse. And I just did it. I just went into this Italian accent, and it was just like, Bill, you go in this house, you go in this one. And he was like, okay, in like this, like this.
Do you think he would have done that if you were speaking?
I probably would have. I probably would have done whatever I asked him to do. So he goes inside, shuts the door. That picture that we saw just before, he's inside. And then I only shot one roll of film, 12 frames. Actually, Mamiya, RZ, 10 frames. So I think there's like 4 frames inside, 4 frames coming out the door, and 4 frames, can't remember what the other one is. And I was like, yes, amazing, Bill, amazing. You come now, you come. The thing, because my skills on the Italian accent are limited, but I can only do a few words, Bill, and amazing I can do, and I can say this one. But you know, I can't go much deeper than that.
That's enough.
I did my one roll and finished, and then I went to shake his hand, and I just said, really sort of kind of in a normal voice, I just went, thank you so much, that was absolutely fantastic, in my normal voice. And he just kind of went, wait a minute, you're not Italian. And I was like, just kind of gave him a shrug, and I like to think that to this day he is still wondering about that guy.
He'll never trust a photographer again.
Never trust a photographer ever again. In fact, there's a stipulation with every shoot that he does now, the photographer has to bring their passport.
Yeah, the real accent. Yeah. So that sounded like, despite the conditions, it was an easy shoot, but sometimes your subjects can be confrontational for one reason or another. Not necessarily to do with you. Sometimes they don't enjoy being photographed, or they don't enjoy the results, which I think is more often the case rather than the process. But yeah, I know we've talked about this before, where most of the people you photograph have been shot 1,000 times. So for them turning up on a shoot, there's nothing special, there's nothing exciting, there's very little interest from them. But sometimes there's animosity or disdain or just being difficult for the sake of it. How do you deal with that?
I find that really hard because I'm reactive. So I tend to give back what I'm given. And I tend to mirror people, you know. If they're camp, I'll become really camp. If they're all into football and a bit more macho,
You get geezer.
I'll get a bit more geezer. I mean, my wife makes fun of me for this, that she says that I alter the way I talk depending on who I'm talking to. And I know I do it. And I think it's because you're just trying to, it's a sort of weird form of trying to display empathy, which might be a bit disingenuous. but I'm not doing it deliberately. Going back to what we were saying about McCartney, you know, that McCartney has developed this kind of persona, and I think that's like how he's dealt with the colossal amount of fame he's had. So my way of dealing with people is I try to sort of, well, again, I don't realise I'm doing it. I just do it. You know, a bit of a slightly chameleon like, and I will mirror them. So if I get someone who's really in a great mood and very excited about this, I become in a great mood and get very excited. If they become dour and downbeat, and then I become that. So it's not something, I wish I was able to overcome that, because sometimes you've got to, like, it's almost like you're losing control and you're just sort of trying to blend in. So like because of the picture we're going to talk about here, which
Damon Albarn.
is Damon Albarn. And, you know, I never, so this is 2014. And I had never shot Blur. It's the only sort of big British band of the 90s that I never really
Was
did.
this for his solo album, or was this for...
It was.
It wasn't a Blur.
It would have. Well, no, it wasn't a Blur album. I can't remember what it was.
I think it was his solo album.
It was. Yeah, it would have been a solo album.
I think that was his first solo
yeah.
album outside of all the other side projects he has.
But it was. I went to it was his studio in West London. I was very excited. Well, you know, just not excited, but I was looking forward to meeting him, because also we're the same age, and we have the same sort of background in a way, in that we both come from the sort of suburbs of London, you know, from the sort of the sort of M25 world land, you know, where London is this glowing, shiny city on a hill.
You have to get a train.
And you have to get a train, yeah, exactly. And we're the same age, and I think we have a lot of the same references, and also I just do think he's a fantastic artist, and I was really looking forward to it.
And very photogenic.
And yes, and very photogenic, and it just did not go well. It did not go well. So I arrived. His studio was really visually busy, but in a way that was quite hard to figure out in the short window of time that I had, how I could make that look good in a picture. I remember he had loads and loads of these kind of funny, tiny little Asian puppets everywhere that were making it busy, and like I just couldn't deal with how to put them in a picture. So I just thought, well, I'll put a colour armour up, put a grey backdrop up. So when he came in and saw the grey backdrop, I remember what he said was, "Oh, what's that there for?" And I was like, "Well, you know, I'm going to do your picture against the background." And he was like,
Hide your tap.
And he goes, "Oh, it just seems a bit formal," which I thought was quite strange thing to say, actually. It seems a bit formal. But anyway, we started, and he was very non-responsive to anything I tried to say to him. And I remember then saying, "Oh God, this isn't going to turn into a standoff between two passive-aggressive people, is it?" Because that's how I can be, passive-aggressive, you know. And he sort of smiled dryly at that, and I think he responded to it in a sort of positive way, he kind of appreciated the dryness of it. So, okay, we're doing all right now, and things are going well. And I remember we talked about something filmic, cinematic, some film that we talked about for a bit, and then you get these periods where there's just awkward silence. And I've sort of, since this period, I've learnt to just let the silence hang. If there is silence, just leave it there. But at that point, I hadn't quite managed how to deal with silence. So I tried to fill that silence with, just say something, say anything. And what I can't remember what I said, but whatever it was unbelievably anodyne and bland.
Didn't say Noel says you're the second best band in
I should have
Britain.
told him that, actually. Oh, shit, that would have been good. I said something, I can't remember what, and he looked at me with this unbelievably malicious and sardonic face, and he just went, oh, and you were doing so well. It's like, you know, pull a lever and dump, and you get dunked into the shark tank. You know, it was like that. Oh, you were doing so well. And that just killed me, absolutely killed me, that. And I don't think I could recover from that. And then obviously it's only after the event, and then I do the pictures, and I can't look at them for, I mean, it's about a week before I can even look at them. And then I started to realise, oh, actually, they're not bad. They say something about our.
I mean, this one's great, isn't it?
Our time, you know, they say something about about what was going on between us. And then, you know, just talking to other photographers, you know, there's like a sort of anonymous support group for music photographers, I think, where you can go into the anonymous room together and talk about musicians that you've experienced. And one of the things that I've picked up about him, Damon especially, is that every single female photographer I've ever talked to who has photographed him all say he's an absolute dream. I love working with him. He's so great. Every male photographer, the opposite. And I started to think, oh, maybe he's got an ultra competitive alpha male streak in him. And it doesn't matter whether you're a photographer, another musician, anyone. I mean, this is just my COD psychology. It's that I think that possibly he might just be someone who's better with women, you know, as a collaborator, or, you know, I don't know. But that was just, you know, it was just interesting that every woman photographer said how great he is, and every bloke, every male said the opposite. You know, sometimes you just can't. There's nothing you can do, and you sort of chalk it up to experience. But it's very. I was really depressed about it for a couple of weeks. You know, you feel like you failed, and you also feel like you've been oafish. You know, because
of the way you've handled it, or the way
because you feel like, well, this is someone who I really respect as an artist, as a musician, and you do want them to like you, and to walk away thinking that guy thinks I'm a Burke, thinks I'm an idiot, I'm such an oaf, you know, and you come away feeling very like you've let yourself down. But then as you get some time and distance between it, you realise that you can't control everything. And that some days you get people on an off day, and, you know, you can't always read. You know, you can't, you know, often, you know, one thing I say in the book is often I think the act of portraiture is a bit like burgling a building. The subject is the building, and you have to go around and find a door that's ajar or a window that you can break, a weak spot, and get in. And you do that with conversation and charm and whatever it might be, and those are your tools for breaking in. And once you're in, then you can pillage it, right? And sometimes you just can't find a way into that building, you know. And that's sort of how I thought of him, actually. After a while, just couldn't get in.
And then I think with our next picture, Oliver Reed, you had the exact opposite experience.
That was,
to put it mildly.
You know, I was 27 then. 26. I was 26. And my best sort of friend, childhood friend, was an actor, and he had got a part in a film that Ollie was in. And it was shooting in Minsk, in Belarus, former Soviet Union, in the summer of '95. And they were out there for, I think, maybe 6 or 8 weeks. And my friend John said, "You should come out. I get on so well with Ollie, the crew, because the crew are all Russian and Israeli, and they don't really, there's just not really a lot of common ground. You know, the Russians don't really, no one speaks English. We don't speak Russian. The Israelis kind of keep to themselves. It's just me and Ollie. We're the only real, you know, English speakers. You know, so we're just. So my friend John said, you know, I reckon, you know, he'd be up for, like, you know, someone coming to write, do a magazine story. So I pitched it, and they said, yeah, great, let's go for it. What happened was there was only one flight a week to Minsk, and so I had to go for a week. And the day before a couple of days before I was due to go, his agent rang me and said, "Oh, Ollie's been in touch. He's got a couple of requests. Would you mind doing him a favour?" And I was like, "Yeah, no problem. What?" He said, "Well, he says the toilet paper over there is terrible. It's completely unusable. Would you mind taking him some decent loo roll?" I was like, "Yeah, of course, no problem." And the other thing is, he says all the bath plugs in the hotel have been stolen. He doesn't know the exact size, but perhaps you could take a selection and maybe one of them will fit. So I go buy a load of Andrex, and then I go to a hardware shop, and it's like, you know, what those hardware shops, like the sort of two Ronnies, four candles sketch. Have you got any bath plugs? And the bloke is like under the counter, and he pulls out this really old cardboard box and just tips onto the counter 100 different times a bath plug. And I was like, well, just give me I just took a load of them, you know, and took them with me. Arrive in Minsk. I knew his agent had told me what his room number was. Get to the hotel, drop my stuff off in my room, and then go to his room, knock on the door, and I've got, like, you know, 48 Andrex in a bag, in a suitcase. Knock on the door, and I just hold open the suitcase like this, and, you know, from behind the door I can hear, like, yeah, just a minute, and the door opens, and he's wearing like a bathrobe and his boxer shorts. And he just opens the door and he just looks at me, like, for a split second, completely blank. Like, why is this man standing here holding a suitcase full of toilet paper? And then his brain clicked in, and he suddenly realised it all fell into place. I remember he put his hand on the back of my neck, this big paw of a hand, really hard on the back of my neck, and he pulled me in, and he just kissed me full on the mouth, and then for the rest of that week, we were just me, my friend John, and him were just around all the time together, and we just hang out. And then we were in this massive ex-Soviet propaganda film studio, and we would just sort of sit there, you know. And they had all these sets built, all these different room sets and things. And we would just sit there and just sort of chat, and he'd tell us stories and all kinds of stuff.
Did you have a specific brief?
No,
to get
just go and
get whatever you could.
What happens?
Yeah.
And that is what happened.
Oh, he seemed quite relaxed.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to ask you a few questions just about some of the technical side of things, which I don't normally interest me. But, like,
why are you asking me the technical side, Dave?
Feedback. We've had feedback. People
Have you?
want to hear that shit. Yeah. Like, you ever do a Q&A and someone says, what film did you use? You know, or what
Colour
lighting do you use?
Do you know, in the film days,
Yeah.
because in the film days, this is something I remembered the other
Come on,
day.
Grandad.
Here we go. So in the film days, when you did the job, you would charge the magazine, or whoever it was, record company, magazine, whatever, would pay for the expenses. And the way it used to work was you used to bill them per roll, Devon contact. So roll of film, cost of developing, and a cost of a contact sheet. So there was a price for the film, let's say £6 a roll. Then your dev, maybe a tenner, and then your contact, maybe another tenner. So £26 a roll, and you shoot X number of rolls. So when you get a job for someone and you didn't want to spend the money on the film, I always, for 15 to 18 years, I just always had a massive kind of sports bag, sports hodl,
I'm going to say sports car full
full
of
of
film and development
full
money.
of film, but it'd be all kinds of film. You know, there'd be like
Are you like a painter who
8
buys
rolls of
tins of paint and uses it on the next job?
yeah, exactly that. So I've got 8 rolls of mag for 1,000, 4 rolls of EPP, 4 rolls of EPK, 4 rolls of Fuji MPH, some MPS, all these different, some HP5, FP4, Tri-X, T-Max, like all these films, just like loose in a bag, left over from other jobs. And then you go, I'm going to go and shoot this job. It's a quick job, half an hour. And I go, oh, don't need to. I'll build them for the film, but I don't need to buy any because I've got all these leftovers. So I'll just use. And when I was doing the book and I was going through shoots, scanning film, I would scan a frame. Great, scan and then pick another frame for a different roll of film and scan that, and it would just come out completely different on the scanner. I go, but the settings are all the same. Why is that? And then I looked at the film and I realised it's because I've got 8 rolls of film on this shoot, and I've shot with 8 different types of film.
I remember, that was like the photographer's sort of bonus money was, prints and developing I remember doing a job for Mojo, and every time I'd deal with Jim Marshall, the first few times I'd have to send him money and he'd send me prints. And he wouldn't, he'd say, send me $2,000 and he'll send me prints. I'm like, but you don't know what I want. He said, I fucking know what you want. So he'd send me these prints and then he'd say, send them back. And he'd send a bill on top for the prints. So it was $2,000 to use whatever I wanted.
Oh,
and
usage.
Then,
yeah. Yeah.
If I used 1 or 20, it was $2,000.
Yeah.
And then he'd send me a bill for the prints. And then one time I got these prints back and they had my notes on the back. And they'd come to me a second time with a bill for the prints. And I said, Jim, you can't charge me for prints that were already printed in the first place. I paid for them once. And he went, just pay the fucking bill. So, okay. But like with lighting and stuff now, like if do you prefer to use lights, flash, available light? Do you have a preference?
It's horses for courses. Every single time it's different. I have to say, the older I get, the more mesmerised I am by natural light. Just the way that natural light can give you magic that is unrepeatable. That you just could never get ever again. And that, when you get that, rather than think, I'm never going to get this again, that's so annoying. Now I think, well, that's what makes it unique and special, is what the things you get from natural light. Using artificial light, whether it's continuous lighting or flash, you can make things eminently repeatable if you're using the same technique over and over again, which can make the work a bit dry, boring.
Plus more people can do that.
And more people can do that. Knowing how to use available light, and then mixing it also with your own artificial light is also, can be really rewarding, But it's really just what mood I'm in as well, and what, there's nothing nicer than just using the light that the good Lord gave us.
And if you're out and about, so are you the type of photographer who's always taking pictures, or do you only take pictures if you're being paid or hired?
I need to be really motivated. I need photographically motivated. I need the motivation actually is to be commissioned, and it isn't the money, although it is the money.
But was it always like that?
I think even when I was young, I had things.
Do you walk along and see a nice tree?
Not really, no. Occasionally, because the thing is it's a real commitment. it's not something that you can just do half-heartedly. You know, so if I'm going to take pictures, I'm all in. And so without the motivating influence of the commission, the gig, there is nothing that I can't, you know, it takes a lot to make me go all in then, you know, but once you get commission, it's like, okay, someone needs this. It's a job, it's paying the mortgage, but it's also someone somewhere has said, the person I want more than anyone else in the world for this job is Chris. And that's a very, you know, that's a very empowering feeling when someone says, we want you to do, you know, I did a job recently with Keir Starmer, where I spent a day with him, and, you know, there's lots of people they could have asked to do it who would have loved to have done it, you know, it was a really interesting day. And I had unbelievable access with him, you know, and to be asked to be the person that they ask is a great feeling. That said, I'd probably go, you know, if it's really hard to articulate. I remember when I started doing all the stuff with the Verve in the 90s, the motivating force, the motivating thing that made me go and do that was not commissioned. That was just me spending my own money on film, hanging out with them, going to the studio. But the motivating factor was going into the studio because I bumped into one of them in the street outside Olympic recording studio in Barnes, just by total coincidence on a Friday afternoon. And he said, oh, we're in Olympic. He was like, it was like I got into a newsagent's and he was in the newsagent's, which was like 3 doors down from Olympic. Bumped into him, Simon, the bass player. And he goes, oh, we're in Olympic, come in. Go into Olympic, and they played me a sort of still unfinished Bittersweet Symphony, but it was all there. You know, the strings were on it, the drums were on it, everything was on it, more or less. And hearing that, and for the first time, completely unexpectedly, and thinking, fucking hell, this is amazing. This is an amazing song. I want to be involved with this. That was a motivating factor. I don't care that no one is asking me for this. I know this is brilliant, and I know that somewhere down the line, other people are going to think this is brilliant, and somewhere further down the line from that people are going to want pictures of the people that made this.
Your first book?
Music, my first book on Real Art Press.
That's a good book.
But you know, I was 26 then, 27, and I'm with people they're all the same age as me, or more or less. We're all the same age, and you're like excited to be around people who are doing something exciting. Now that I'm a lot older, you know, and I've got commitments at home and children and everything, you know, it's much harder to just go off.
Who's left though? Who would your dream commission be? I know this is a very terrible question. But you've done royalty, politicians, prime ministers, Oscar winners.
I would love to go on. I would love to just be able to go on inside the US presidential bubble, like what Pete Sousa did.
Yeah, fantastic.
Obama. It's just.
Yeah.
It's just.
That's all day, every day.
All day, every day. 4 years. Yeah, but look at the stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
You know, every day something amazing is happening.
Yeah.
You know, the people that, you know, the US president gets to meet, hang out with, spend time with, hang out with, you know. But that's a level that's just, you know, I just couldn't imagine. There's nothing I can think of that would be more stimulating than that, you know.
Which president, though?
Ooh.
Political fans.
Kennedy, be good.
Oh, yeah.
Theodore Roosevelt would be good.
There'd
go duck hunting with Theodore Roosevelt.
You wouldn't have been allowed to photograph, though, with Kennedy.
Yeah.
Not now, son.
No. We'd finish at 5.
Private time.
Yeah, private time. Oh, gosh. Yeah. I mean, Kennedy would have been great. Truman would have been great, especially for the atomic bomb moment. Yeah, so...
That's good to aim high, basically. Yeah, aim high. So fair.
I never think of anyone because the thing is sort of everyone is equally... I'm sort of excited and ambivalent at the
So
same
what
time.
don't you want to do? Like if someone called up and said, "Can you go to blah blah and do this?" Would you say no? Do you ever say no?
Um,
Out of choice rather than logistics.
I mean, I'm not interested in really. I'm not that bothered about. There's a lot of like low rent TV type people, and I'm just not. It's not that exciting to be given someone that's on Strictly.
Fair enough. They wouldn't make it into your book.
I don't think so. I mean, the thing about the book is, can we talk about celebrity?
Yes.
Because the use of that word, because I often get described as a celebrity photographer.
Celebrity snapper, I read once, yeah.
And that's the thing, yes, back to the question at the beginning about what
See what we did there?
Yeah, we come all full circle now. That is one that really winds me up. Because, first of all, I've photographed lots and lots of humans who are not celebs. I've photographed all, coal miners and cotton farmers and taxi drivers and everything, But the people that I'm most proud of photographing are people who are the best in the world at what they do. Possibly the best ever in the history of the world at what they do. They're people who excel in their field, and that is, yes, it is people like Paul McCartney or David Bowie. It is Stephen Hawking. It is Ian McEwan.
Superman.
It is Christopher Reeve. They're people who have defined the time, the era in which we live. And, I mean, I'm trying to think, Dr. Johnson, you wouldn't describe him as a celebrity biographer, would you? Hang on, who did Johnson, was it Dr. Johnson and who was the other one? I've completely forgotten. But anyway, I'm proud of photographing people, of being asked to photograph people who are really the top of their, absolute apex of their field, whether it's music, politics, science, art, geography, whatever it might be. That's what I'm proud of. And I think that the use of the word celebrity really demeans the act of what people like me do. I'm fundamentally a portrait photographer, and my job is to try and get something that will live, that, as I say in the book, my employer is posterity. That's my ultimate employer. I'm here for posterity, for the stuff that will remain long after, hopefully, after all of us have gone. Because when you go into the National Portrait Gallery or somewhere like that, and you see things done by people from, who are no longer here, I find it really awe-inspiring,
So you've got some work in the portrait gallery, haven't you?
Yeah, got a few things, yeah.
And I think the criteria is the sort of definitive portrait of the definitive person in that field.
Is that what it is?
Because everyone is trying to get in there. I used to get a lot of calls, can you get me in there? I'm like,
Right.
no, because your fucking pictures are shit.
Yeah.
And the subject's boring. But it has to stand the test of time.
Yeah.
So it's, when you look at it, it's all carefully considered, and, it's for the National Art Collection.
Yeah.
So it's like an archive of important people.
It's funny because the things of mine that they have got are quite often, they say no to the things that I think would be absolutely perfect for the National Portrait Gallery. And then they've contacted me in the past about things that I thought they'd never be interested in.
But they're completing a collection, as you see. They might already have it.
Yeah.
They've got. I remember doing we were working on a Beatles show there, and one of the people, more from the painting side of things, said, "Why do we need another Beatle picture? We've got one." And they had a painting of Paul McCartney from, I think, Humphrey Ocean or someone like that. So in their mind, they had a picture.
It's
they
complete.
Yeah, but I mean, it's changed quite a lot now, and they've opened up to photography in particular, which was never really seen as worthy or art.
Oh, it was definitely third class
Yeah.
before.
They would have called you a snapper.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do remember taking part in a group in a show in the late 90s. For a music one, and there was a dinner for everyone after the opening, and we really felt like we were second-class citizens, like
in the
the
corner.
board or whoever the chairman was or whatever, I can't remember now. But anyway, I remember feeling like that this was really like a bottom of the pile event for him or them.
Yeah.
And I wrote him a letter, actually. I can't remember who it was. Wrote a letter and just saying,
How dare you?
Basically, how dare you? Yeah.
But you know what's interesting is, I think it was Testina or one of those shows they did in the 90s. It was one of their highest grossing ticketed things,
Yeah.
but still, it was looked on as not. But now, their photography department is fantastic, and you're in it.
Yeah. I'm really proud to be in it. It's one of those things that sort of validates you.
Yeah.
In the eyes of people who don't work in this field or know anything.
Well, also they are looking at, as a picture, they're looking at it for, it has to tick. First of all, it has to be a great picture. So that's the first. It doesn't matter if it's a bad picture of the Queen; they're not going to put it in. So well done.
Thank you, Dave.
And your book, Not Just Pictures.
My book, Not Just Pictures. Yeah.
Available from Real Art Press and all good bookshops.
Exactly.
And the National Portrait Gallery bookshop, I believe.
Couldn't have done that without you.
And it's a good book. And thanks for coming along.
I've really enjoyed it. Hope it wasn't too late.